One night, you catch yourself dreaming of skidding on unpaved roads and tougher than usual terrains. When you wake up, you immediately check your fixed gear. You look between the fork. You look between your chainstays. You're not making it up in your brain. What you're imagining is a real thing. Tracklocross is the discipline's name, and the widest tires on your fixed gear is the rule of the game. Hi everyone, this is Joel Boncodin coming to you from Casa Santiago, and welcome to our new episode of Shop Talk. Shop Talk is the talk show segment of our YouTube channel. It serves to supplement our custom-built videos with stories, information, and conversations about the single speed bikes that we are curating, assembling, and selling. If you're into these kinds of content, consider subscribing to our channel and clicking the notification bell below. Our main talking point for this episode is what is Tracklocross all about. And then after diving deep into that discipline, we will be bike checking the Celt 2017 frame we recently rebuilt in a Tracklocross setup. If you haven't watched that video, click on the card above and watch it after you're done with this one. That bike has been put on sale. By the time you're watching this, it may have been sold already. Nonetheless, if you're in Metro Manila and you're interested, click on the link below for more information on the bike. To answer the question, what is Tracklocross all about, we first have to look into cyclocross. Simply put, it is a cycling discipline that has similarities to mountain bike racing, cross-country cycling, and criterium racing. Cyclocross bikes are typically lightweight drop bar bikes, but with greater tire clearances and more upright sitting positions. Cyclocross races, on the other hand, involve cyclists lapping around a relatively short course that features various terrains such as pavements, trails, grass, steep hills, and obstacles. You will often see CX cyclists dismount their bikes and carry them to navigate through the obstructions. Photographer Angel Perez, for a 2019 article on the Radavist, dubbed Tracklocross as the evil sister of cyclocross. Tracklocross blends two cycling disciplines, track cycling and cyclocross. That is the use of brakeless fixed gear bikes to skid about on obstacle-filled and less than stellar road conditions. Wedging the widest tires possible on your track frames is another thing that sets Tracklocross apart. The appeal of Tracklocross is realizing that it's so much fun to be using the wrong bike for the wild terrains that you're running. Organized Tracklocross can be traced back to early cyclocross events held in Europe. And when I say early, I meant the first half of the 20th century. At that time, people were still using fixed gear or single speed bikes, with the rear derailleur only being invented in 1905 by Paul de Vevey and only coming into prominence in the late 1930s. Naturally, this early form of Tracklocross would take a step back with the rise of the geared bike. In itself, fixed gear cycling is a niche here in the Philippines, making Tracklocross a niche within a niche. But across the globe, Tracklocross, as we now know it, has been making waves through national competitions and organized social rides. At the top, I said that we recently rebuilt the Celt 2017 frame that was featured in the latest custom-built video. That's because, before the purple TP Heighten V2, this Celt used to be my daily driver. I bought it late in 2019 and used it for the whole of 2020 before swapping out bikes early this year. This Celt was my entry point to riding fixed gear and single speed bikes. All our decisions regarding what components to get for this rebuild took into account the bike's intended use, and that is Tracklocross. So let's first take a look at the skeleton of this Tracklocross build, the frame set. In this build, all components are brand new, except for the frame set and the crank arms. This Celt 2017 frame comes in at size 56 and has a matte black finish. On the head tube, I stuck a Plant Owners Association sticker to give it a bit of personality. I purchased this bike as part of a whole bike, and at the time, it was probably the most accessible fixed gear, and many had it as their entry-level bike. Completing the frame set is the Project Full Chromoly fork that could easily fit a 700 by 35C tire. That huge tire clearance is perfect for this build. The frame and the fork is put together by the Project OS threadless headset. Since it has seal bearings, it's plenty reliable even if you go out and ride it on dirt. We now move on to the heart of the bike, the drivetrain. Powering this Tracklocross build is a Lasco square tapered crankset with a 39-tooth chainring. The crank arms are 165mm long to help avoid hitting curbs and obstacles on the road. The stock 48-tooth chainring was swapped out with a 39-tooth one to get a Trackloss-specific gear ratio, which we will touch on in a bit. Tying the cranks to the frame is a 107mm bottom bracket from Piz. Connecting your feet to the cranks are flat pedals from the same brand, while homegrown foot retention from Sakit completes the crank setup. On the rear wheel is an unbranded and unassuming 16-tooth fixed gear cog and lock ring. The drivetrain is linked together by the ever-reliable KMC single-speed chain. Blog site Fiefdom recommends a 2.2 to 2.6 gear ratio for Tracklocross builds, with a gear ratio of 2.35 as a sweet spot for beginners. This is equivalent to a pairing of a 40-tooth chainring and a 17-tooth rear cog. Gear ratio refers to the number of revolutions that the rear wheel will make for each full turn of the crank. It is computed by dividing the number of teeth on your chainring by the number of teeth on your rear cog. The lower the gear ratio, the easier it will be for you to spin your cranks. A higher number, on the other hand, will make acceleration slower but will give you faster top speeds. As I've already mentioned, the gearing for this Tracklocross build is 39/16, giving it a gear ratio of 2.44. That puts us over the median of the advised gear ratio for Tracklocross builds, but still relatively close to the recommendation for beginners. For road descents, this gearing can be a bit excessive, but if you're bringing it up mixed terrains and some hills, it hits the sweet spot. At the same time, the 16-tooth cog at the back gives you 16 skid patches, which is more than enough. Next, let's look at the wheel set. For this build, I went with a pair of 36-hole 30mm alloy rims laced to Technic hubs. Technic seal bearing hubs. While the higher spoke count adds some negligible weight, it sure does make the wheel sturdier and easier to keep true. Given the intended use of this build, the weight savings and the aero gains from lower spoke count wheels is not that necessary. The rim set is wrapped in 700/32C CST Ciudad meats. A compromise had to be made in choosing the right tire for this build. I mentioned earlier that the TP Full Chromo Fork can fit up to 35C tire. However, the manufacturer recommendation for the Celt 2017 frame says that it could only fit up to 28C. So the tires that we chose, the CST Ciudad, already pushes the limits of the frame. Rounding up this Tracklocross build is the finishing kit, the cockpit setup, and the other contact points. For the handlebar, I chose a 680mm Uno riser bar. It has a 15mm rise and a 9mm back sweep. This has an oversized bar bore or a 31.8mm clamping for added stiffness. I also got these flanged Ori look-alike grips to wrap the handlebar. Connecting the handlebar to the steerer tube is an Uno 45mm short stem. Since I went with wide risers on this build, I didn't go all out on the stem length. That way, you maintain control and leverage over the front end of the bike, which is important in going through rough terrains. Last for the cockpit is an offset Uno seat post. It comes in at 25.4mm in diameter and is 400mm long. This is one of the quirks of the Celt 2017 frame. It still has a small diameter for a seat post. Topping off the seat post is a GD edition saddle. It has a width of 140mm and rails made out of steel. The saddle has a rather flat profile on the sitting area, and while it does not have a cutout, it has a recessed center portion. Again, we are selling this Celt 2017 built for Tracklocross. If you're in Metro Manila and you're interested in buying it, click on the link below to see the listing on our Facebook page. That's it for this episode of Shop Talk. If you want to talk more about this frame and this build, leave your comments down below. If you found this video interesting and informative, consider subscribing to our channel and clicking the notification bell. We definitely have more in store for you in the future. So thank you for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye!